Here is a segment from the arena on Hamza's Den in which Daniel Haqiqatjou was a guest. I will analyse a section of this video where Daniel speaks about science and I will offer a better explanation.
Yeah, I did a lot of studies of evolution because when I did my master's degree and somewhat in undergrad, I studied the philosophy of science. And philosophy of science is more general about the epistemology of science, but I had a special interest in evolutionary theory because there is this conflict between Islam and evolutionary theory. It's something that you can't really compromise or like fudge the positions on.
So it's good that he has started off by acknowledging a conflict. Let's see how he tries to resolve this.
So this is a hard conflict, and I just started to investigate evolution, and I found that there's a lot of question marks, huge question marks that are in the evolutionary sciences, but don't really make it to the popular discourse or even like the popular online atheist discourse.
He seems to be falsely equivocating evolution with atheism. Atheism is just the non-acceptance of your God claim. Evolutionary theory is a scientific discipline, which is distinct from theology. He mentions disputes. Of course there are discussions within science. Let's see whether he overplays these discussions in a manner similar to Sabor Ahmed.
And these are things that are acknowledged by some atheists themselves, but they're kind of censored by the atheist community to talk about them.
Really, Daniel? Can you provide me any evidence for this claim?
So one of the really interesting, I think one of the deepest critiques of evolutionary theory comes from an atheist. His name is Jerry Fodor. And Jerry Fodor, basically, I don't know if you're familiar with Alvin Plantinga's argument against evolution. He says that there's basically a deep conflict between evolution and naturalism.
Alvin Plantinga is an American Christian philosopher. He proposed an evolutionary argument against naturalism. This was based on the belief that natural selection selects for survival rather than truth, totally ignoring that the two are linked, as truth is what most closely purports to reality. Here are responses by 11 philosophers to this argument.
Jerry Fodor, one of these top atheist professors of philosophy at Rutgers, he's dead now, he just recently died, but he came out with this book called What Darwin Got Wrong. And this book, in the introduction, he says very clearly that I'm criticizing Darwin. I'm still an atheist. I'm not doing this criticism on the basis of any faith. But in writing this book, many atheists have tried to shut me down or have advised me, don't write this. You're basically giving fuel to Christians or theists in general. And they tried to basically shut it down. But I said, look, I'm an atheist, but I'm just trying to analyze these ideas. I'm trying to look at what is most coherent. That's a very interesting book, and we can get into the details.
Fodor's book, What Darwin Got Wrong, was criticized by evolutionary biologists such as Jerry Coyne. Here are some other critical reviews. Please pause the video to read them.
As well, there's James Tour, who actually is a Christian, I think a born-again Christian, actually, and he is a professor at Rice University. He's a professor of synthetic chemistry, and he has published hundreds of peer-reviewed papers. He's basically one of the world's top experts in synthetic chemistry. And he will say that no one actually knows how it's possible, how you could even get close to generating, the most basic proteins, like the most basic, most basic amino acids and proteins that are the building blocks of organic matter. We're nowhere close at the edges of synthetic chemistry to understand how it would be possible for such building blocks, the most basic building blocks, to just come out of nothing through just like random processes.
I won't go into full details about James Tour, but I will recommend viewers to watch the 2.5-hour demolition of James Tour by Professor Dave Explains.
It's like, what are the odds, mathematically speaking, of random processes generating even the most basic constituents of organic matter? And the odds are way beyond the lifetime of the universe. Like, what would be possible in the 15 billion years that cosmologists consider to be the age of the universe?
Actually, the age of the universe is considered to be 13.77 billion years. Regarding the mathematical challenges, he does not explain how these odds are calculated. We know from experiments such as the Miller-Urey experiment that amino acids can be produced from simpler inorganic precursors. Evolution and protein synthesis has occurred much more recently in a natural environment, an example being the production of nylonase by bacteria which are able to digest nylon. This demonstrates the flaw in using mathematical models for evolution.
I can recommend this book.
Hamza is now plugging the book The Return of the God Hypothesis by Stephen Meyer. Please watch the thorough debunk of this book and of Stephen Meyer in general by Professor Dave Explains, as well as his other videos exposing the Discovery Institute.
Sure.
If the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu is telling the truth,
Yes.
then Darwinian evolution is false by default.
And if the Chinese creation myth about Pangu is true, then evolution is also false by default. You don't just get to insert your own theological belief in to dismiss a scientific theory without providing adequate evidence for that belief.
So we have very good reason, we claim, to believe that God exists and that Islam is true. And we don't reject science, but then we just put it within a specific, epistemic category that in no way will ever or outdo the very strong reasons we have for believing in God and that Islam is true and all that stuff, right?
So we have some refreshing honesty from Abdul Rahman that whatever science contradicts their theology will be dismissed.
Sure. If you believe in evolution, you believe that you would not believe in two humans like Adam and Eve, or that would come through. You would believe a bunch of humans came. You would believe that this all comes from one cell, and scientists do not know where that one cell came from, and that's abiogenesis, and you would get into very strange things from there. But from my understanding, that is what they have, and they have some peer-reviewed evidence there. They have things like vestigial traits, a fossil record, some DNA evidence, and for me, we're looking at it, it's more convincing, honestly speaking, than some of these prophecies.
Is it not plausible? And how does it contradict our beliefs as Muslims? If we believe that God did specially create two people, Adam and Eve, and then for the rest of us, through the process of evolution, he determined that's the process that will create us. How would that contradict what we believe as Muslims?
If I'm hearing you correctly, just tell me, you're saying Adam and Eve were created by God, but the rest of humans were created through evolution.
Yeah.
This special creation idea goes against all currently available scientific data.
If that was one possible theory or path to Islamic belief, how would that contradict our belief?
It would be non-falsifiable, I would say. It would be like me claiming that,
No, listen to my question. I'm not asking if it's falsifiable or not. I'm saying, does this idea contradict Islamic belief?
No.
No. So then the theory of evolution does not necessarily discredit what Islam teaches.
The theory of evolution does disprove the creation myth. If you're postulating that Adam and Eve were specially created, but other humans developed through evolution, then where is that evidence? Could we detect separate lineages? This is unfalsifiable and unscientific. How do you account for the genetic evidence, such as pseudogenes and endogenous retroviruses, that demonstrate a common ancestor between humans and other apes?
If you
No, it
mix,
Why
does.
does
It does.
it
It does
does, it does,
discredit.
definitely, it does.
The
Yes.
theory of evolution definitely is contrary to Islam. The consensus is that based on DNA analysis and genomics, that it is, according to the scientific consensus, empirically impossible that all of humanity, with its genetic diversity, came from only two people. Like,
Something factually correct said by Daniel.
I'm not claiming
that's
that
the
though.
scientific claim,
That's not
though.
my claim though. That's not my claim though. My claim was that if God created the processes for evolution, but at the same time had specially created two people separate from that process, is that not plausible?
No, it's not. It's like saying that, like some of the young Earth creationists say that, well, isn't it possible that God just put dinosaur bones into the Earth to fool?
I
Like
don't
that
think
is
that's
it's the same.
analogical at all.
It
I don't think
is,
that's analogical
because
at
we're
all.
descendants of Adam and Eve. We're descendants of them and share. Like there is a
Just
nasab,
in a
right?
vacuum, try to understand what I'm saying. Would it be possible that the scientific evidence lines up with what we believe as Muslims, and as a special case that God could have created two distinct people from that process? Is that possible? I think it's possible. Others have advanced it. I'm not advancing it
Is
for the
it
purposes of this
metaphysically?
conversation.
Metaphysically possible? Yes, there are many
Yes,
metaphysical
particular
possibilities. Is it
things.
physically
But I'm
possible?
specifying this particular thing because we believe that God did create Adam one way or the other. We believe he created him directly.
And this is at the centre of why these people have problems with evolution. The fact that it doesn't support the special creation of Adam.
As for the rest of humanity, I think that people can open up their minds and say it's plausible, yes, that God allowed a natural process like pregnancy and have evolution at the same time. I don't see an
So then
inherent contradiction in that.
you believe human beings evolved?
I believe that one could reason that way. I'm not saying that's what we believe or what I believe, but I do believe that's a possibility that people can dispute about.
But it's something that contradicts Islam. It's something that contradicts like clear texts of the Quran and Hadith, to say that, okay, God created Adam and Eve, and then there was an evolutionary process disconnected from that. Like that will conflict with ayat of the Quran.
I must say it is fun watching them arguing amongst themselves, given how earlier they had overplayed disputes within science. Ijaz did later clarify his position on evolution. I will end the video after this clip. Thank you for watching.
If I could just say something clearly, I was not advocating for evolution earlier on. Like Daniel knew what I was referring to. If you guys weren't aware, if no one is aware who's watching, it was Yasser Qadhi who brought the argument of Adam and Eve being created specifically, and then the evolution which follows it, right?